All right, guys, today's September 29th, and my name is Jake Holdaway. I have been involved in the Vineyard LRS GRAMA request process, and I recently heard about the Lake Authority meeting yesterday, and I met the beautiful Peggy Foggio and read her public statements, and I wanted to bring her in for for a quick interview to kind of shed some light for Vineyard citizens as to why she made such a statement and have people get to know her, because she's been kind of a leading cause around the county on the lake restoration solutions. So Peggy, welcome.
Thank you, Jake. It's good to be here.
So Peggy, I wanted to first do a quick introduction. Where do you live? How long have you lived in the county profession? Kind of let everyone get to know you.
Oh, great. We're over in Saratoga Springs on the lake. We love it here. We moved out 4 years ago. A little more than 4 years ago, actually. And I had started researching Utah Lake and the restoration of Utah Lake back before we moved out here.
Okay.
So we've been involved with just the research for quite a long time. My official name is Peggy Climenson. I'm a retired attorney. My husband, Richard Foggio, is also active in just staying up to date on what's going on with the lake.
Well, awesome. Well, I've seen so many email correspondence. Is actually my first time ever speaking with you today. Corresponded a few times through emails. So tell me where you got involved. What inspired you? You say you got involved. How did you hear about it? And kind of bring us from the beginning as to where we are today.
Sure. I did a lot of online research before moving out here and buying a house.
Okay.
And through that, I learned about the Lake Restoration Solutions project very early on. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so that was the perspective of both of us. And we started digging around and learning and exploring. And some questions came up with what experts were saying around the area, from BYU, UVU, Utah State University, and so started studying that. I met Ben Abbott at a meeting at Linden Marina back in January or February of 2019. I was interested and started following what he was doing, followed LeVere Merritt's work, and then ran into some folks from CUV, Conserve Utah Valley, at the State House, actually, when we were showing up to just express some comments during the hearings last winter.
Okay. So as an attorney, then you just started to dig deep and say, okay, what does this look like? Or what were some of the early red flags that kind of brought you into it?
The biggest red flag to me was that as I was asking questions of LRS, there were no forthcoming answers. And I started to see what appeared like pushback on what legitimate local experts were saying, and these were people who were studying the lake as part of their research for years. I mean, LeVere Merritt's work, I believe he worked on the lake for 40 or 50 years. So you would think that our local governments and state governments would also be asking these questions and wanting answers.
Right.
And, Conserve Utah Valley and some of the other local organizations both sponsored the Utah Lake Summits. Those were worthwhile and educational, and following what Representative Stratton and Representative Gramma were doing, and just getting in and trying to be informed about the legislative process and what was being discussed and what I didn't see being discussed in detail that would satisfy me that this was a relevant or not relevant. You know, we all want the best for Utah Lake. The question is, there are these broad dreams, and they have to be backed up with the science, and we weren't seeing science there.
Yeah, you know, we're obviously out. You're out. That beautiful look out that window is Vineyard,
Yes.
staring right at us. And I remember getting heavily involved at the beginning, going council person to council person, and it was they didn't even know the name. They maybe heard a presentation 5-10 minutes, and it was very scary to think, well, wait a second, this is a massive money. I mean, a $6 billion enterprise is larger than, like, say, a Qualtrics. That's a very large Kennecott size thing. Why isn't there any details? So it's interesting. Was that common in over at Saratoga Springs, just a lack of maybe citizen involvement, maybe understanding as to what was going on, transparency?
I would say that that's largely what we've seen entirely around the lake. And it appears that Lake Restoration Solutions approached Provo. Provo said, you know, that they didn't feel comfortable for supporting the project for whatever reason. I don't know the details of that, and they moved to Vineyard, and they got some support from Vineyard, and then they stopped. They were working from the state down.
Right.
They were working from the top down and left the local municipalities out of the equation.
Right.
So last year, when we realized that, you know, they're getting ready to file their application for the dredging permit with the EPA, or for the EPA NEPA process with the Army Corps, it's like, wow, you know, how did this get to this point? Because we're seeing the science, and the science didn't seem to, you know, support that they were ready to make this application.
Right.
And, you know, there were also legal questions about it.
Yeah, I mean, from the Vineyard standpoint, our planning commission had no wind of it. Yeah, they had roads through our city. Our city planner had no understanding. Our roads people had no knowledge. So yeah, and I remember even going to telling people about the EPA application, and it was denial, like didn't even know. So it was very, very common. You also talk about different mayors. Very interesting, in meeting with Brad Frost of American Fork and Provo and various other cities and Orem, as they've lined up and immediately checked the box and walked away and said, whoa, red flags, red flags. You mentioned Vineyard. So you did some investigative work into Vineyard through the EPA. So you're early, let's see, 2019, 2020. And so you see the application. What goes from there?
Right. The big question came when, you know, last January, the Vineyard letter showing a 5 million, or the wrong number. Is that right? 5 million?
Yeah, 5 million. Yeah, Vineyard's the 5 million.
Appropriation. Yeah. For the project came out in the Foresight Prospera prospectus.
Right.
And so there were folks who were asking questions about that, and I started following that, and there were the GRAMA requests and the FOIA requests that went out. And then this summer, the EPA documents for the WIFIA funding application were made available through the FOIA requests.
So for those citizens that are not new, the prospectus is basically LRS went out to a bunch of investors and said, hey, you know, please invest in this beautiful project, $6 billion project on the lake. And here we have a letter from Vineyard Mayor saying, hey, we're loan guarantee / project sponsors.
Right. Well, their actual 2020 letter that's in that perspective calls it a $5 million appropriation. Doesn't call it a loan guarantee.
An appropriation.
So EPA, right. When the EPA or when the FOIA documents came out this summer, there were clearly states in the LRS WIFIA funding application that there were $5 million loan guarantees. There were 2 applications filed by LRS, one in 2020 and one again in 2021. And they referenced two different letters from Vineyard for $5 million loan guarantees.
So we're not talking about a 2021 letter, we're actually talking about two. So it's almost been 2 years. There's a first letter that we're trying to discover, both signed by the mayor, I presume.
We have only seen the Foresight Prospera prospectus letter.
Okay.
Okay. I think it's September 20th, 2020 letter. The one that became public last January.
Okay.
And then in these EPA WIFIA applications, there were two others letters referenced.
Okay.
One in 2020, one in 2021. They're both called $5 million loan guarantees by Vineyard.
Okay.
We've not seen those. They're heavily redacted. You know, the FOIA documents are heavily redacted. Those documents were not included in any way that they were identifiable.
So what you're saying is you guys went to the EPA and said, hey, we just want to look at the loan application, the application for the project. And please give us these documents, especially because it's public funds. I mean, this isn't a private process. This is government, federal dollars. And obviously a local municipality is a backer on that. And still none of the city documents or letters were turned over. Okay.
That's correct. That's correct. And they were assume that they were redacted because it was confidential, considered confidential business information.
As if like maybe they're viewing Julie as a personal financial backer instead of as a mayor. I
don't know. I mean, the letters say City of Vineyard, but we haven't seen those documents.
And there's
there
no
three documents. There could be three separate documents.
Okay. And with that, there's no information as to like who LRS asked within the city or met with, or public meeting minutes, or like approval processes. It's just, we know that there's three letters, and basically the only one that's connecting this entire process is the mayor, basically.
That's correct. And, you know, just think of this. If there are three letters, which it appears to be, or, you know, maybe the two 2020 letters are one letter, I don't know. We don't know.
Right.
But in 2022, in February, when that September 2020 letter was revealed through the prospectus, Mayor Flumer spoke about that letter to the press.
Yeah.
And she didn't acknowledge that there was a 2021 letter.
Right.
You know, well, wouldn't you want to come clean and say exactly what the City of Vineyard's financial commitments for this project are?
Right. I'm only like 30 days into even knowing that there was a second. I mean, I did my first Zoom meeting with Ben Abbott and a few other statesmen. And when it like literally breaking in the meeting, I was like, Ben, you should have told me about a second letter. Like, so this is going back even a year earlier.
Well, we just found out about it over the summer, and I know the EPA documents came to me.
Right.
You know, so
yeah,
we're just learning this.
Right. Which is, I mean, we're not under a witch hunt. We're just trying to find out, like, hey, wait a second, this is $1 billion project. We're not getting any letters. We really don't understand what's going on. And so that's kind of when I guess I got some emails through the chain, because being over head of Wakara Way, that's kind of where I started this. I think I read an email from you about that. And I believe Conserve Utah Valley led kind of the GRAMA with Sean Herring in Vineyard. And that's when Sean contacted me and let me know he was going through a GRAMA request of Vineyard, of saying, okay, here's this city. And to kind of set the landscape for Vineyard city residents, you've had cities line up around the county opposing this, and actually working, doing resolutions and various things. And then you have one city saying, hey, we do want these, two 15 size highways going on both sides. It's very apparent when you see the loan prospectus. It's like it'll surround or engulf the city. That's a pretty big $6 billion, bigger than the one of they say the largest housing project ever done in the United States. It's like in the document. So anyway, that's why you guys kind of got involved. Did you get a chance to go through the Sean Herring grama requests that he did at Vineyard, and then I got access to? And what was your takeaway from that?
Well, I did go through those. That was before I had the ZPA WIPIA documents. They came.
Okay.
Okay. So
okay.
Going through the Vineyard grama request, there were two documents or two conversation strings that jumped out at me. The one was Chris Judd, who was a former city council member at the time.
Yeah.
That 2020, the September 2020 letter would have been signed, asking about where the approvals were, because he was getting questions from citizens.
Right.
And he didn't recall it or couldn't find approvals in the city council records. And the second was correspondence between Jeff Knighton, who was on the RDI.
City planning. He's a city, Vineyard City Planning Commission.
Okay. So he was also asking, about approvals and what was, did Vineyard support this? He didn't support it. What was Mayor Fulmer's position on it? And those are in the grama document. So
right.
It made me wonder whether Mayor Fulmer was acting on her own. Did the city of Vineyard really support this project?
Right.
But to me, that's just a curiosity because I'm across the lake.
Right.
This summer, when I saw the WIFIA documents, then there's this question of this discrepancy between what the mayor is saying, those
right.
that September 20th letter says,
right,
and then what the LRS loan application documents to the federal agency say.
Right.
They clearly say $5 million loan guarantee.
Yeah, you could drive a bus through that. It's like two completely different. In fact, I know here in Vineyard, I was like, when I first did this, I remember reading those documents and I was like, whoa, for the past 9 months, Vineyard has been, or the mayor has been referencing a grant and they are giving us money and this is contingent on, where they're going to be improving some shoreline, and I just kind of listened to it and I was like, okay, this isn't this kind of bizarre behavior, but okay. And then, but when those documents came out, it was like, I don't see the word grant. I don't see shoreline. I don't see a plan for any of this. I see a loan guarantee for a $6 billion housing project. Yeah.
And the question is, in all fairness to Lake Restoration Solutions,
right,
there should be a resolution to this. Who is telling the complete story?
Right. Yeah, you don't know.
Is it the company that's trying to get U.S. taxpayer funding from a federal agency, or
right.
is it the local mayor?
Right.
Who does she misunderstand what her letters represented or how they were used?
Right.
Was she misled, or is her city fully behind this project?
Right.
We're just trying to understand that. So why is it important to me? Because for the reason I wanted to bring this to the Utah Lake Authority attention is that there are 4 members that were appointed to board seats, Utah Lake Authority board seats, who have a long-term relationship with Lake Restoration Solutions in one way or another.
Right.
And the executive director also does. So you only have a 15-person board. And
right.
If they are all kind of embedded with this
Right.
company, then, will you get an even-handed
Mhm.
consideration of proposals to restore the lake?
Right.
And where you have Mayor Fulmer, who seems to be the most closely tied to it, now sitting as the chairperson, plus this big discrepancy between what the company LRS is saying
Right.
and what she's saying. Somebody should resolve that before the ULA starts handling proposals and considering
Right.
proposals, voting on proposals.
Well, that was my takeaway was you have a massive entity, a $6 billion company coming in, and then you have this small town mayor with this letter. They are two complete things. I know 4 or 5 months ago, I mean, this is back in February actually, so it's been much longer. Okay, now that we've revealed this, I've been waiting for like a press conference, like, hey, Lake Restoration, so this is what is happening, or the mayor to come out and be like, okay, this is what happened. But it's been crickets. I mean, it's been like, and you're like, well, wait, you guys are going forward with the EPA loan application. We don't even know where, like, is this a loan? Is the city invested in this? Are they behind this? And so, up to this point, even with Sean going, okay, and I think I mean, I don't know if you looked at the GRAMA request. I felt like it was reasonable. Hey, we would like to know all of the meeting minutes, like meeting requests of these 3 letters, like that have to do with these 3 letters. I think, yeah, when did they reach out? Who was reached out to? I think, asking, were there meeting minutes so that we know who was present to listen to their, if we're going to be an investor in the islands, who's listening to the investment portfolio of return on is Vineyard getting a return? I mean, obviously I think we would, because this isn't a housing project within our city limits. So why would we be investing in something outside of our city limits if we're not getting a 10% return on our investment or something like that? You know what I mean?
It is a curiosity when you said that, the mayor has been talking about a grant. I've not heard anything about a grant. I haven't participated in or observed any of those meetings in Vineyard, but, was Mayor Fulmer or the city of Vineyard promised something in return for signing these letters? I don't know. I mean, it would, like you're saying, this is a city that the Islands Project is a city that's happening outside any of
Right.
our, municipal boundaries. It's in the lake.
Right.
It's going to be an independent city. So what is the benefit?
Right. Well, and I asked that too, like when they said, hey, they're going to be, there were a few, and I've got a lot of various, I don't know if they were scrambling, but there's some variations of that story. We've got them recorded through Facebook chats and various things of like, oh, they're in return, they're going to give us some shoreline improvements was one. And, I don't know. I don't think that's a quid pro quo or anything, but yeah, it's like, because it is outside of our jurisdiction, is it a financial thing? Like we're going to make money or yeah. So the meeting minutes would be key to me. I also think like just the interaction of how the letters were drafted, like the wording of that, just making sure that it checked all the boxes. Like, did it go through our city attorney? Did it go through our city planning? Did it go through the rigmaroles of what a city would do? Did all of the various council members touch it? Because they're all publicly or privately saying, never seen it, don't know it, don't know the name. And so that's when I kind of jumped on board. Been a huge Julie supporter, put a sign up just last election, but then just, whoa, I hope we followed all the processes here, right? Type thing.
And I think that's what's important. I think, like I'm impressed by some of what she's accomplished over in Vineyard. I
Right.
think, forward thinking. She's got a lot of energy. That's great.
Right.
But, you need to be transparent. You need to follow the, the procedures of government. And I think that, your Zoom conference that talked about that, those processes,
Right.
brings that to the forefront, and, we're not trying to bash Julie. We just want to know answers, and she
Right.
has the letters, so, she must have the letters that she signed if she's a responsible person.
Right.
And why aren't they forthcoming? And why aren't the approvals forthcoming?
Right.
So that we can understand, because I mean, at this point, City of Vineyard is a different thing. You have a transparency processes issue that if I was a citizen there, I would be asking a lot of questions about that.
Right.
But, if from the broader perspective of the ULA, we don't want the ULA to be fraught with the problems that we're seeing with the Inland Port Authority.
I could definitely respect that. I mean, coming from outside of our city, and that's kind of why I wanted to interview you. I mean, I didn't get a chance to go to the Utah Lake Authority meeting, but I got some texts. I was in a meeting, and out of the blue, they were like, "Do you know Peggy?" I was like, "I read a few of her emails, never met her. I'd love to interview her because it's a different perspective, and that's why I appreciate you doing this interview." But tell me, obviously you went to a new Lake Authority meeting. That's kind of intimidating to go in and give some comments. What did you say? What were some of the things coming from your perspective of what you wanted to hear?
I tried to point out that there's this discrepancy within the public record.
Okay.
Between what Lake Restoration has told in writing to a federal agency under threat of criminal prosecution under 18 USC 1001 versus what Mayor Fulmer has said.
Right.
So
I mean,
either, somebody should resolve this, and the people who have the information to resolve this are Mayor Fulmer and Lake Restoration Solutions. And I don't think the ULA should do business with Lake Restoration Solutions on any proposal until it's resolved.
right.
And I don't think that Mayor Fulmer should act as chairperson until it's resolved. And maybe she shouldn't sit on the ULA board. She has council members who could sit in her stead, who do not have this controversy surrounding them right now.
Right. That's actually one of the things that, I heard from council members that has kind of been, well, Julie says, or the mayor says, if I can't sit there, Vineyard won't be represented. And, well, the first thing that I saw was Terry Peterson from Orem. The mayor doesn't even sit on it. He put someone on there. So did Springville or Spanish Fork as well as not the mayor. They just kind of send somebody.
Right. Saratoga Springs, we have Chris Karn, which I highly respect his involvement. So
that was,
I think that's a cop out on her part, and particularly if she's not going to be forthcoming in sharing the documents that would answer this.
Well, I've come out very forcefully. I from all the documents that I've read, I sent her a letter, and I was very I gave her some time to respond, and it's been months and months, and if it's quiet, you need to resign, and unless you can put forth a story, but you can't be quiet and move forward. Like we either have to know that it was an LRS and this, we're financial investors, and then that's a whole nother ball of wax of what is our return on investment, loan guarantee. So if it goes bankrupt, we're ponying up this, or they are lying, they're not telling the truth, and it's this, and then that gives us another ball of wax. But I was just, when we got the GRAMA request, and it was, we are not going to produce any other documents, this is everything, and there's no public record. It was, that is not an option in government. If this is the status quo, you must step down, and that's not a mean thing, but this is just how you get to make the decision, but as citizens, we get to know how that decision was made. And also, in speaking with many senators today, I got to speak with Senator Bramble today, and he said, yeah, I've heard about this letter. If there is no council approval, she has no authority for that. And does your council know that, and the steps that need to be taken through that? It's not personal. It's just, this is a, and that's why I liked your voice of that you're coming from Saratoga Springs. So anyway, go through kind of some of the things that you guys are wanting out of it. You spoke with them, and what were some of the red flags? Are they kind of the letter, the 3 letters, the grandma information, kind of before things could move forward? Julie should not be sitting on the board because of the documents, or were there other things?
No, I think it's the documents are enough for why I think she should step down as chairperson and have an independent inquiry into whether there's a conflict of interest between her and Lake Restoration Solutions that may be personal or it may be citywide. We just, there is a question of transparency that comes out of this, and maybe even candor, because why are you not handing these documents over? Well,
right.
Why not share them? Because it would clarify the situation for both sides,
right,
in a positive way,
right,
so that you can move forward.
right. We all have to play by the same rules. Yeah, I get what you're saying there.
And we've seen folks say, well, the WIFIA application is waitlisted.
Right.
Okay. And this is all secondhand, and it's something that the Vineyard folks should follow up with their city council. But I heard there was some discussion among city council and Vineyard that if they just wait until the WIFIA funding applications are off the wait list, then this whole problem goes away.
Yeah, that's bizarre to me.
It does not correct the transparency in government. It does not protect, or it doesn't fix problems about transparency and candor and what happened in this situation. And it's very likely, as LRS moves forward, that they'll make another WIFIA filing,
right.
filing for funding.
Right.
And people are thinking, oh, well, with the, Division of Forestry's update at the interim natural resources meeting back in, that's August, I guess, September, that, the project is dead, the Lake Restoration Solutions project is dead. Well, I don't think that that's entirely true. I mean, there are things they could do. They could, limit the project, change the project, put together smaller proposals. So we don't know. I mean, and there is this relationship between Mayor Fulmer and Lake Restoration Solutions, and I think that it's relevant for the Utah Lake Authority as well as the City of Vineyard, to come to resolution on what's going on.
Yeah. With your permission, I know you sent a letter after your public comments to the mayor. I'd love to share the details. We're not going to go into all of it today, but just for Vineyard citizens to see the concerns from a resident, a well-educated attorney that spent hours upon hours trying to dig through and, hold governments accountable. So I'll make sure I share that. But my other comment, I guess this is my opinion as well, is that, so what you're saying is there's no harm yet, so all of this just sweep under the rug. I think my comment is how did we get here? Those emails and those documents will help us understand. It'll help Julie get better. It'll help LRS get better. It'll help the Utah Lake Authority get better. It's not really going after anyone. But in my experience with the National Association of Counties, you can't just say, trust me on this. I provided these letters and I don't want to talk about it. Like, or like, you know, you hate me because of this or whatnot. And so any other last comments or questions?
Well, you know,
I guess I would ask you one more question. What would you want Vineyard citizens to do or to know?
they should just ask questions of their city council, ask questions of their mayor. And I mean, the ultimate is when, you know, Mayor Fulmer comes up again for election, you know, they can, you know, express
Right.
their concern with what happened here if she isn't forthcoming, you know, through the ballot box.
Right.
I think you all deserve to know what happened, what Vineyard's commitments are, and why there's been this hesitancy to discuss it in an open forum and hand over documentation and approvals.
Well, thank you, Peggy Climenson, and for your time and your expertise and really trying to improve not only Vineyard but the county and the state, and go read the documents, citizens, and I think this will help you. So appreciate your time today, guys. Thanks.